And you're tuned into the Weekend Jazz Update with Jashanti Silva. On this week's episode, it's all about Shirley Horn, her life and times and best hits. During this hour, we're going to be talking about some of her best albums of all time. Here's a quick recap of what's coming up. The first album is called You're My Thrill, released in 2001. In this album, Shirley is joined by Johnny Mandel. Also, this album came on top of a previous album for which Mandel won a Grammy called Lush Life, released previously that year. Guest artists on the tracks include Wynton Marsalis, Russell Malone and more. This album takes us through a dreamlike compilation of romantic ballads covered in Shirley's vocals with piano, bass and drum accompaniment. Another album called Close Enough for Love, released in 1989. In this album, Shirley does something different, covering each song with a unique flavor. Also some great duets between her and the collaborating artists like Buck Hill, Charles Abels and Steve Williams. Another album that topped the charts upon release, a tribute to Miles Davis, called You Won't Forget Me. On this album, Shirley is collaborating with her longtime mentor Miles Davis. Also joining them on the tracks, a star-studded cast from Wynton Marsalis to Billy Hart. The album takes us through some beautiful, moving love songs, each song a chapter in a narrative of romantic ballads. So that was some insight into what's coming up during this hour, and you're tuned into the Weekend Jazz Update with Jashanti Silva. We're going for a short break. We'll be right back after that. Stay tuned. And you're tuned into the Weekend Jazz Update with Jashanti Silva. On this week's episode, Shirley Horn, her life and times and best hits. During this hour, we're going to be talking about more of her best albums. The first one's called You're My Thrill, released in 2001. In this album, Shirley infuses some beautiful jazz classics with new vibes and themes. Her music was all about painting a picture through the music, like an artist painting a picture through brushstrokes on canvas. In this album, she reportrays existing jazz classics with her own flavor. For instance, she portrays the song Solitary Moon with lush, dreamlike vibes. A Sinatra classic, Best Is Yet to Come, is portrayed with a barroom lounge feel. Also, this was another great collaboration with Johnny Mandel. This album came on top of their widely successful 1992 album Lush Life, for which Mandel was awarded a Grammy. So basically 6 tracks where Shirley is on vocals and piano alongside her trio. Also, there are several guest appearances from artists like Wynton Marsalis and Russell Malone and Steve Williams. Another album called Close Enough for Love, released in 1999. This one's a great album where Shirley turns small moments into powerful narratives. It's a compilation of great love songs and ballads. Songs like Baby, Baby All the Time, This Can't Be Love, and But Beautiful. Joining her on the album is a trio featuring Charles Abels on bass and Steve Williams on drums. Also guest appearances by tenor saxophonist Buck Hill. The album's been described as having a late-night jazz setting. This one was widely successful and won her fame as a great pianist and singer of her time. There's a great solo by guest artist Buck Hill on tenor sax on the classic swinger Beautiful Friendship. Got Lost in His Arms is a beautiful narrative of love, also featuring soft percussion. Shirley also scat sings on this song. For a glimpse into some great piano vocal duets by Shirley, the songs Close Enough for Love and So I Love You. She covers them with powerful soft piano melodies matching her moody vocals. On Come Fly With Me, a Sinatra classic, she alters the phrasing, bringing new depth into the song. So basically, she does something different with this album, covering each classic with a unique twist. She scat sings and portrays beautiful ballads with a unique flavor. Overall, a compilation of soft, relaxing jazz songs. Another iconic album from Shirley's compilation, You Won't Forget Me. This one's iconic because of many reasons. For one thing, it was the last album Miles Davis appeared on as sideman. Also, Miles Davis is one of Shirley Horn's primary inspirations, and this album went down as one of their most memorable collaborations. Also making an appearance on the tracks, other jazz legends like Wynton Marsalis and a lot of others. Also, this was Shirley's first jazz album to peak at the #1 position on the Billboard Jazz charts. The theme of this album is one of mystique storytelling through the music. The album takes us through some nostalgic jazz classics, each one a chapter in a saga of love. So that was more insight into some of Shirley Horn's best albums of all time, and this is the Weekend Jazz Update with Jashanti Silva. We'll be right back after some music. Here's Shirley Horn with... And this is the Weekend Jazz Update with Jashanti Silva. On this week's episode, it's about singer and pianist Shirley Horn. Now for some trending album news. So there's a great new album up for release called The Vessel. This album celebrates the multifaceted vessel that is African jazz. The album's by Jamie Ospina and his group, and joining him on the album is Victor Cruz, Nick Tozzo and a lot of others, a star-class list of musicians, many of whom have contributed to the Latin and African music in Austin, Texas, where Jamie Ospina hails from. Jamie Ospina is a multi-instrumentalist and composer. He originally grew up in Colombia, then moved to Austin, where he became a pioneering force in the music in Texas. With a like-minded group of individuals, he began to explore the cross-currents of reggae, funk, jazz and Afro-Caribbean music. This album, The Vessel, was a result of that exploration, celebrating the various influences of African and Latin theme music in 10 beautiful melodies. The title track is a cross-section of the themes in the album, celebrating the beauty of African culture. There's tracks on several themes, from introspective ones like El Lamento, The Calling, and songs that meditate on the relationship between nature and music like El Viento, The Wind. So with this album, Ospina's bridging the gap between various genres of music, while celebrating the legacy of African and Latin theme music. The Vessel was released on May 24th. For more information, please visit www.jamesospina.bandcamp.com. So that was some trending album news on the Weekend Jazz Update with Shirley Silva. We're going for a short break. We'll be right back after that. When we come back, we're going to be talking about more of Shirley Horn's best albums of all time. Stay tuned. And this is the Weekend Jazz Update with Shirley Silva. On this week's episode, Shirley Horn, her biography and best hits. During this hour, we're going to be talking about more of her best albums of all time. Here's a quick recap of what's coming up. The first one's called Embers and Ashes, released in 1960. This was the album that rocketed her to stardom after Miles Davis heard it. It's got some great covers of popular classics like Softly as in a Morning Sunrise, God Bless the Child, and Mountain Greenery. On this album, Shirley's beautiful vocals were introduced to the world for the very first time. Another album called Live at the 1994 Monterey Jazz Festival, released in 2008. It was the Monterey Jazz Festival in 1994, and Shirley Horn's appearance was one of the iconic events from her career. This album compilation was based off that festival. We see Shirley taking on some great songs here accompanied by her trio. There are some great captivating vocals and swinging piano melodies on this album, featuring ballads, jazz classics, and pop songs. Another album called Shirley Horn with Horns, released in 1993. On this album, she's joined by an orchestra featuring Quincy Jones and others. An album called But Beautiful, the best of Shirley Horn. This album gives us an insight into some of Shirley's best performances over the ages. So throughout the album, Shirley sings with a nostalgic emotional style, and this album is a great introduction to the works of Shirley Horn. So that was a quick recap of what's coming up during this hour, and this is the Weekend Jazz Update with Shirley Silva. We're going for a short break. We'll be right back after that. Stay tuned. And welcome to the Weekend Jazz Update with Shirley Silva. On this week's episode, Shirley Horn, her biography and best hits. During this hour, we're going to be talking about more of her best albums of all time. The first one's called Embers and Ashes, released in 1961. This was a debut album and introduced her to the world for the first time. She had a great velvety voice that was particularly great for ballad singing. She was also a great pianist whose inspirations included Ahmad Jamal, Errol Garner, and Oscar Peterson. So we see instances of all this on her debut album. There's some great songs here like I Loves You, Porgy. This one's a melancholy song taken from the famous musical Porgy and Bess from the 20s. In this song, the singer is pleading with her lover not to leave her for another woman. Softly as in a Morning Sunrise. In this song, the singer is comparing the advent of love to a morning sunrise, something that happens gradually like the sunrise in the morning. God Bless the Child was originally written by Billie Holiday. This one's a song about the need to be resourceful, to take control of one's own destiny, with unwavering confidence in one's ability to go the distance. This was the album that rocketed Shirley to fame after trumpet legend Miles Davis heard it. He invited Shirley to collaborate with him, which led to a series of recordings at the Village Vanguard Inn in New York City. Also ended up landing Shirley a spot singing a film soundtrack for the movie Love of Ivy in 1968. Another album called Live at the 1994 Monterey Jazz Festival, released in 2008. So it was the Monterey Jazz Festival in 1994, and Shirley Horn's appearance is one of the iconic events from her career. This album compilation was based off that festival. We see Shirley taking on some great songs here, accompanied by her trio, bassist Charles Abels and drummer Steve Williams. So on this album, Horn is bringing various lyrics to life in different styles, be it on ballads, jazz classics, or pop songs. She has a very dramatic take on a Leon Russell classic called A Song for You, with swinging piano in the backdrop, a dreamy song called Here's to Life, and a beautiful nostalgic classic called The Look of Love. She also shows off her piano technique on songs like I've Got the World on a String. This one plays out as a very peppy, energetic song. On Fooling Myself, she's more playful. She's also got a piano instrumental on Blues for Big Scotia. Another album called Shirley Horn with Horns, released in 1993. This is one of her early albums recorded for Mercury Records, the very first album that she signed up for. This album is a deviation from her usual trio settings that Shirley performed alongside. On this one, she's joined by an orchestra. Shirley's on vocals accompanied by Quincy Jones, Bill Byers, and others. Some of the top songs, a quirky rendition of On the Street Where You Live, and a peppy cover of Come Dance With Me. Shirley later got famous for her slow, deeply emotional style on ballads, and there's a glimpse of that here. Songs like I'm in the Mood for Love, and a cover of a Sinatra classic, Only the Lonely. And an album compilation called But Beautiful, the best of Shirley Horn. This album gives us an insight into some of her best performances over the ages. There's a song called You Won't Forget Me, Shirley performed this song alongside Miles Davis for a tribute album of the same name. On this song, she's on vocals and Davis is on trumpet. The song The Great City first appeared on Shirley's album Loads of Love. On this song, she's singing passionately about how the big city is the answer to her problems. A song called Jelly Jelly, which also features a delightful solo by Roy Hargrove on trumpet. So throughout the album, Shirley sings with a nostalgic emotional style, and this album is a great introduction to the works of Shirley Horn. So that was some insight into more of Shirley Horn's best albums of all time, and this is the Weekend Jazz Update with Jashanti Silva. We're going for a short break, we'll be right back after that. Here's Shirley Horn with I Didn't Know What Time It Was. This is the Weekend Jazz Update with Jashanti Silva. On this week's episode, a legendary jazz singer and pianist, Shirley Horn. We've come to an end of this week's episode of the Jazz Update, so now let's recap what we were discussing during this program. Shirley Horn was a leading jazz pianist and singer of her time. She was known for her lush, velvety vocals, also her unique style of covering jazz classics. Shirley Horn went on to win 9 Grammy nominations for her music, also a Grammy Award in 1993. Her songs were typically romantic ballads covered with unique styles. So that was some insight into her biography. Now let's talk about some of her best albums of all time. The first one's a Grammy Award-winning album from 1992 called Here's to Life. She's joined by composer and arranger Johnny Mandel on the tracks. Mandel went on to win a Grammy for instrumental arrangement accompanying vocal for the album in 1992. The theme of this album is about how life is an adventure, and Shirley is joined by her trio bassist Charles Abels and drummer Steve Williams on the tracks. She also plays piano. Another album, this one topped the charts upon release. This one's called I Love You Paris, and this album was recorded during a live concert in Paris, and sees more great romantic love songs portrayed in Shirley's great velvety vocals. Also several guest artists on the tracks. Another album called You Won't Forget Me, which was a tribute album to her mentor Miles Davis. On this track, Miles Davis makes his last appearance as a sideman in an ensemble. This was a great romantic album by Shirley Horn, and also hallmarked her iconic partnership with Miles Davis, who mentored her in her early days. Another tribute album to Ray Charles called Light Out of Darkness. Ray Charles is one of her frequent collaborators, and she portrays some of his best loved classics in her unique style, infusing new depth and meaning into each song with her cover of it. So that was a quick recap of everything that we discussed on this week's episode of the Weekend Jazz Update with Jashanti Silva. You can check out the highlights of today's show on my YouTube channel, The Weekend Jazz Update with Jashan. So on that note, I'll see you again next week. Have a great week ahead.